Long before cities, before the wheel, humans were already getting high, deliberately, for 10,000 years, leaving evidence everywhere. You think of drugs as modern, but ancient sites are full of them. Burned seeds, pipes, art made by people clearly not sober. It's in frozen tombs, ancient teeth, and the walls of the first temples. Getting altered may be one of the oldest human habits there is, older than farming, older than cities. So what were they taking, and why? The answer runs through a Greek historian spying on a tent full of howling nomads, a frozen body buried with cannabis, leaves still tucked in 10,000-year-old cheeks, and the strange idea that we may have farmed beer before bread. Start with the man who wrote it down. Around 440 BC, the Greek historian Herodotus described the Scythians, horse nomads of the steppe, throwing cannabis seeds onto hot stones inside a sealed tent. The tent filled with smoke, and, in his words, the Scythians howled with joy. He thought he was describing a solemn cleansing ritual. He was, more or less, describing the world's first hotbox. For centuries that was just a story. Then archaeologists opened the Pazyryk tombs, frozen graves in Siberia, 2,500 years old, and found the exact kit: little tents, braziers, and charred cannabis. Herodotus hadn't exaggerated. He'd been taking notes. And it wasn't only the steppe. In the Andes, people chewed coca leaves for thousands of years. The residue still sits in ancient teeth. Half a world away in a Spanish cave, Neolithic farmers laid opium poppies beside their dead around 6,000 years ago. Everywhere anthropologists look, the pattern repeats. The moment humans settle somewhere, they find the local plant that bends the mind, and they build a ritual around it. Some of it gets genuinely strange. In Siberia, shamans ate the Amanita muscaria, the red and white toadstool from every fairy tale, to drop into a trance. The mushroom is toxic, so, reportedly, the shaman would take it, and the others would drink his urine, which carried the active compound but filtered out much of the poison. The reindeer did the same. It was a very efficient, very grim recycling system. In much of Asia, hundreds of millions chewed betel nut, a mild stimulant that stains the mouth blood red. Travelers kept describing entire villages of red smiles and red spit, perpetually, gently buzzed. And then the big one. One theory says we didn't settle down to farm bread, we settled down to brew beer. At Göbekli Tepe, they found giant stone vats carrying the chemical fingerprint of fermented grain. The first monumental building on Earth may have been, essentially, a bar. Sit with what that implies. The move to farming, the thing that built civilization, may have been driven, at least partly, by the very simple wish to keep the drinks coming. Because for most of history, this was never really about getting wasted. The drug was the religion. The Eleusinian mysteries, the most sacred rite in ancient Greece for nearly 2,000 years, centered on a secret drink called kykeon. Many scholars now suspect it contained ergot, the same fungus LSD is later derived from. It's debated, but it means some of the founders of Western thought may have had their defining spiritual experience while tripping. Across the world it was the same. The visions were the point. People took these substances to meet gods, to see the dead, to heal, inside strict sacred rules about who and when and how much. The controls weren't laws, they were rituals. The idea that any of this was a crime is astonishingly recent. Outright prohibition, banning these plants entirely, is barely a century old. For roughly the 10,000 years before that, the human relationship with getting high wasn't criminal. It was sacred, structured, and everywhere. We didn't invent this, we inherited it, and then, very recently, tried to pretend our ancestors hadn't spent millennia elbow deep in it. So look at us now. A coffee to start the day, a drink to end it, a whole aisle of things to change how the hours feel. We treat the urge to alter our own minds as a modern weakness, something to be fixed. It may instead be one of the most human things we do, and one of the oldest. Some researchers think it runs deeper than habit. The drunken monkey idea suggests our pull toward alcohol is millions of years old, inherited from primates who ate fermenting fruit. If so, the craving isn't a modern flaw. It is older than our species. For 10,000 years, getting high had a container, a ritual, a priest, a purpose. What changed isn't that we started, it's that we lost the container and kept the craving. So the next time someone calls it a modern problem, remember the frozen tints, the red-stained smiles, the 10,000-year-old leaves still tucked in ancient cheeks. We were never really sober. We just used to call it church. There's a new episode every week, more of the strange, true history hiding inside things you thought you understood. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.